Hey everybody! Oh my goodness. It has been a hot second since Young Girl has been on your radio. I put this on pause and now we're back, and we're back with so much more intention, so much more focus. Being able to return here in a capacity where we can give our clients the tools that they need with the audio and the visual and the toolkit, and for you guys to be able to kind of dip into that if you want a tool. And we've been busy. We've had so much going on. I'll lay out the land for you. We hired another run coach, Kirsten, who's kinesiologist, exercise physiologist, just lovely human, absolutely adores the trails, and is our trail gal coach. We hired her and it's been almost about a year. She's been on our team and thriving. Coach Destiny, she got her master's in kinesiology since we last talked, and she is now in Australia, Western Australia, doing her PhD. So incredible. She's still coaching with us. She's still got all her client load, and she's doing that on top of her PhD and racing. She's got her half coming up soon, that's going to be there and raising funds for Indigenous peoples. So super proud of both the girls on our team. It's phenomenal. We became Lululemon Run ambassadors since we last talked. Crazy. So amazing. They support us in so many ways, and we were up on the wall in our local store, which was incredible, kind of a little like local fame situation, but just getting recognized as professionals locally, who just align so much with their vision and mission, and just supporting us through everything we needed. And yes, we put on 2 race retreats since we spoke. We did one up in Ucluelet, which is on Vancouver Island, for the Edge to Edge half marathon and 10K. And it was brilliant. We had a massage therapist, we had someone doing facials, we just had a great time, and we had a whole team house, and we ate well, just phenomenal experience. And then we leveled it up with our second retreat, for the BMO half marathon 8K in Vancouver, which we stayed in West Van, gorgeous, beautiful spot. And this time we had an in-house chef, which was incredible. And we also had a yoga instructor join us too. Namaste was the whole weekend, and also riding those highs together of race day. We did expo together. We did post-race massages. We just traveled all those highs and all those realizations, and just got to extend that finish line feel, which is what the retreats are all about. And so that happened. What else has happened? Overall, life has been lifing, which has been amazing. My partner Marcus and I, we went from living in a basement, like 200 square feet, to a condo that was just like a little bit bigger, and then to another condo, and finally to another basement suite that just had very few windows but was allowing us month to month until we found literally our dream home, which has been amazing. We are renting, but we are on the waterfront. There's space for our dog Rue, and literally we have like the most dreamy. This has been my dream. This desk setup, sitting right beside Marcus, who's running his business from home as well. And so I just have to wait until he leaves so I can record these podcasts. That's the only barrier right now to entry, which is fantastic. So my last episode, I definitely recorded. I remember it vividly. It was moving week, and I actually had to record the actual whole episode in our bathroom, because there was construction happening, and I had to put my house coat over my head, my bathrobe, so that it didn't echo off of the washing machine, because that's where I had my laptop sat and my mic plugged in. It was just chaos. So that was my tipping point where I put this on pause, and now we're back, and we're back with so much more intention, so much more focus. Being able to return here in a capacity where we can give our clients the tools that they need with the audio and the visual and the toolkit, and for you guys to be able to kind of dip into that if you want a tool. But this is going to be a place where we're making like actionable items and resources that you can actually use today. So you'll find today's worksheet's going to be down below. You can just pop your email in, it will go straight to your inbox, and you'll be able to open it, print it off, etc. so that you can really apply what it is that we're going to learn today. So why did I make this episode, and why is this relevant? And literally it came up in a coaching call earlier today with a client. But we seem to have training amnesia. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it applies to so many other things that happen in our world. We get amnesia on a lot of things and we forget about it, and, we're in another bad relationship, or, we've had, mothers say this all the time, childbirth is the worst, oh my God, but our bodies somehow forget the pain enough that we have a second or third child, right? And it's just wild how our body can go through these same patterns. Childbirth is completely different. Have multiple children, it's great. But we don't need to be going over the same patterns that are going to bring us necessarily a not an ideal outcome again and again and again. We can kind of zoom out, have a greater picture, and then focus in with a bit more intent. So either we run out of time to train, we realize, shoot, I'm peaking for a race, or I really wanted to train at this time of year, or I started coaching and my life is just hectic. We get to have a bit more foresight as we lead into those things. So this is really what this episode is about, is zooming out, looking at what is going to bring you the most success with this year with those said goals. And it's not necessarily a calendar year, it's just over the next several months. And give yourself that ability to circle back and guide yourself on a bit more of a trajectory that's going to be a little bit higher as you approach the same cycles, the same systems, the same annual things that normally come up, or the same races, right? Too. The lovely thing with races is we get to step back into them and do them again and do them better each time with the stuff that we've learned from previous experience. So as we dive into this one, we're actually going to take this resource and go step by step through it. So if you haven't yet, download it, put your email in, it'll send it right to your inbox, open it up. If you want, pause this, go do that, come back, and there'll be one page that we'll go through together, and then a second page where we'll then map it out and kind of zoom out a little bit more. So this tool is exactly what a coach will do with you if you're brand new, or if you've finished a goal and you're setting that trajectory for the next one, okay? And we take women who are runners of all levels, and this is applicable. Because you can be completely untrained and starting to train and know exactly what the timeline looks like and what your time of year looks like for most success for said training or said getting into running. It doesn't even have to be for a specific event, okay? Just life and lifestyle of running and the joy that comes with running. And we take them to where they need to be, okay? With one-on-one digital coaching, we got mobility and strength and run programming. We do comments and calls. It's just full on. And again, we get a lot of people that are like, I don't know if I need your service because I'm just a casual runner, or I'm returning to running. That's where we need it most. That's where we need that handhold, because we can so easily put it on the side burner and not put our health first and not put our running and our joy first. And that should be prioritized. And as women, sometimes we don't. Everything else comes first. We come next. So this is the permission for you to sit down and take a look at it through a coach's lens with my cues and dive into things, because I think you're going to have a lot of success as you move forwards with this. Okay, so you've opened the sheet and we are going to look at the first section, which has got the prompting questions. Now you can write these into those little squares if you want, or into a journal. If you're listening along, just think about them if you're driving. So what time of year do you or might you feel best and enjoy running or racing the most? Now, if you're brand new to running, think of the times of year that you're like, ooh, I really want to exercise. Or if this is all year, great. Where would you feel most comfortable exercising? A lot of people, if there's a rainy season or a cold season where you live, like here in Canada, then okay, is it safer for me to be indoors at a certain time of year, especially when it's dark? Or are there seasons where outside I'd be really successful? Or does it not matter? Are you an indoor, outdoor, just you got your head in the game and it's go time? Sometimes it's just nice to identify that or premeditate that as you get into it. The same with racing. Like, when do you actually like to run? Or like, what weather do you like to race and run in? And I mean, again, we can be racing for all sorts of different reasons and enjoyment factors, but it's just nice to have that little bit of a focus too, because then we can premeditate, okay, well, if that race is in early spring, that means you're training through the winter. Do you like that? Do you not? Will you stick to a plan? Will you not? Again, we'll go through other questions that will help you identify that too. What about strength training? What's your setup like? What do you enjoy strength training at certain times of year versus other? That can kind of become your offset for off season. If there's times where you don't love to run, but you would strength train, that can become your off season. We can really capitalize on different times of year. This gets really fuzzy for individuals who live in places they can run all year. And usually this is where we see the most people have overuse and burnout in training. But overuse injuries for sure. It's because the training never stops and the training can never cycle unless you do have a coach who can guide you through that. But oftentimes you can keep going and we can go, it's fine, mileage can keep trugging on, but we don't have those forced off seasons to focus on our strength. It's just race after race after race, or long outdoor run, because it's just so perfect. It's perfect to run and there's no kind of barrier to that. So pros and cons for both of the weather sides of things. And what climates will you be racing in? So again, another one, a bit more coaching specific. Will you be at altitude for your races? Will you be in, we have a lot of people that go down to the States for hot runs, Japan for Tokyo Marathon, some different climates, and again, with a lot of travel, come with their own challenge. So just nice to identify, if I'm training for a race and it's going to be somewhere like Hawaii, we had a client doing the Hawaii half, now maybe it's time to train in kind of a time of year. Well, I guess the race would be at the same time, but it's good to know those factors so that we can really capitalize on those too. Making sure we're training with heat load, making sure that we're training with certain things in mind if we are at altitude, and those come with specific specs, if you know what I'm saying. Good. So what time of year do you or might you feel best and enjoy running and racing? Because that will be your guiding light and just be really great for individuals who are just getting into it too. Okay. What races do you have your eye on? Get a little more specific. If you haven't thought about races or you haven't raced before, picking ones that are great distance, picking ones that are local so you don't have that challenge of altitude or further away. You're training in the environment that you're going to be racing in. If you don't know, great time to just have a Google explore, what's happening locally. There's a lot of women's runs that happen that are just women. There's very few men if you want that really comfortable entry into racing as well. And shorter distances, so you don't have this, if you tend to be a bit more of an anxious person, getting into race weekend and not having as much pressure that comes along with very big races that are half marathon distances, or just have really high numbers of people involved in those races. Okay, what personal things you got going on? That's our next section. So thinking about holidays and vacations, that's a really great one to start with. When have you got time booked off? What are you going to be doing on that? Because a lot of people have that pressure of, I've got to keep up my training even though I'm going to be in Europe and touring around Venice, or it's places I won't be able to run, or I don't know what it's going to be like to run, and I actually just don't want to run because we got all these things that we want to do and see. Perfect. We get to carve that out and make sure that we've bumped training a certain way that that portion of your coaching and your training in general won't be negatively impacted by that vacation. Nor will you feel forced to have to fit in training. Now, of course, that depends on your goals, etc. But just nice to put those things in the calendar and just know when things are coming up. Especially when it gets to longer runs for half marathon training and marathon training, or even long trail races too, where I know a lot of people here in the summer love to go on camping trips on the weekend. But then that means they need to fit their 2 to 3 hour run somewhere else in the week. And that can get really hard. We have some dedicated women who run when they go camping. Period. And I love that for them. But that doesn't mean everyone has to fit into that box. And again, it's just good to pencil these in and note them down. And if you don't have them noted down, start asking those questions around the dinner table or in the friend group chats if you go on vacations with friends. Start instigating when those vacations are going to happen so you can like map them out in the next like 9-10 months. What other things could be personal that are going on? We have people that have not conflicting goals, but different goals. We have women who are getting married the same year that they have races, and they also have aesthetic goals. So just being able to weigh those and play those together. What about your significant other, your partner, your life partner, your best friend, whoever you reside the most around? When do they have times that they lean on you, or they have really big push seasons? And this can be for yourself too with work. What do you have going on that can be a cyclical challenge? Maybe like me, you help and run race events that happen locally. I know that those times of years are big ramp ups to very focused weekends. Also, accountants, another great example. They have tax season. Tax season is like, don't touch me. Don't touch me with a 10-foot pole. Do we necessarily want to have that in our middle of our training cycle for a hard event? It's just going to add that load on mentally and physically, especially with lack of sleep or stress in general. We don't want to be messing with the fire on those ones. So just a great one to have and to note. Moving into the next section, based on your fitness right now and how you've trained in the past, or maybe how injured you currently are, how much time do you need for said goal if you do have a specific distance of a race that you want to complete based on past races, based on just where you're at in training, how many times a week you're running, if you have a base of exercise fitness or no base. Again, it's fine not to have a base right now. Just know that you'll have a month, 2, 3, depending on your race distance, of course, to have a bit more of a buffer leading into that said race. So just good to kind of cycle back on that and know where you're at with your fitness, and from your physio if you do have injuries, if you have concussion, like knowing how far out the recovery looks for that before you can be cleared potentially to return to running, and then be able to have control and have that plan. Good. So just being realistic on our training and our distance and our current level and abilities. Last one, sign up time. When do you have to sign up for the race? We've had a lot of people that like hold out because they're like, I'm not sure if I'm fit enough for the race or if I'll be, and we're like, just sign up. And then they don't sign up. Early bird happens. The race sells out, which is happening more and more these days because there's a lot more people interested in fitness and in running specifically worldwide. So like, get those into the calendar and try and confirm them as soon as you can. Of course, look at all of the prerequisites if you want to trade your bib, if you can't race. But there are a lot of options when you look at racing, having it be a sign up, and then you can always transfer later if you'd like not to be in that race. But good to sign up for all the ones you have your eye on keenly. And especially taking advantage of early birds, because it can be quite a lot of a discount when you get in earlier for the races too. Another one to consider, again, going back to people that are potentially injured or have some things they're working through physically. What is the cutoff that you are putting on for that for yourself? I have a lot of people put like a soft line in the sand for their training for a specific distance goal. And then they got a hard line in the sand and they say, hey, if I'm comfortably doing long runs by June, whatever, I'll feel really confident about the race. But if I'm not making my X amount of distance, then you know what, I'm just going to be pulling out at that point and just either using it maybe as a training run if it does feel like a safe thing to do, reducing the race distance too, because a lot of events do have full marathon, half marathon, so you could come down to the half marathon or half marathon 10K or 8Ks below that, so you can just transfer it down if you want, transfer it to the next year if that's an option for that race, or even transfer to another person and just sell your ticket out before that deadline happens. So all these things are really good to focus on. And the other one would be based on that and how many months back you need to look at is your coaching start date. When do you need to start either that plan that you have? We have a bunch of sellable plans for half marathons, 10Ks of multiple levels, and 5Ks as well. So that you know, okay, this plan is 3 months, or okay, my assessment with Holly, okay, that means we need 4 months to get us up to that specific race distance and goal based on where I'm at. So let's shade those off in the calendar. Good. So now that you've looked at that, you filled in a lot of things. It's a lot of work. Anything else that comes to mind, pop it down in the schedule in that little note. And then let's take a little look at the next page in the worksheet. That is a whole year. Now this one, it's 2025. I'll probably update it to 2026. So it'll be here and functional for you guys. But I wanted to have it be year specific so you could see when the shaded lines were of weekends, because that'll be really easy for you guys to just be like, oh yeah, that weekend's a long weekend, or that's when I'm camping, and be able to just draw through and have everything on one page. Sometimes we're great at using Google Calendar, and we're great at using other calendars on the wall that are month to month. And even our clients who use our coaching platform, they see week to week, they see month to month, they see all the nitty gritty, but to zoom out and see it all on one page can be sometimes a little overwhelming, but oftentimes it makes things really simple because we can really hard block sometimes and we can just see things as they are. So as from the last page, you're going to pull over and put the seasons that you do or don't like to run. Maybe even just star them. You can color them. If they're a hard pass on training through the winter, you can do like a dashed horizontal line through those months, or even just write vertically through that whole month. Strength training build, like off season, cross training. If it's not going to be necessarily running outside through the months of, say here in the Northern Hemisphere in Canada, like November to like January, maybe those are just like months, don't want to do it, hard pass. Then swipe those out and say strength training ? And that can be a focus during that time of year. Now put in those areas that were a little bit more taxing, specifically for personal things going on. So holidays, seasons, your partner or significant other having push seasons at work, maybe the kids, maybe you got family that you're like, oof, that's hockey playoffs, or maybe you're a hardcore fan and hockey playoffs is something you need to just swipe off in your calendar too. Just not as a cold, hard cut, but again, just as a reminder, this is kind of what's happening in that time. So if it does overlap with maybe 1 to 2 months of training as you get into it, that might be okay. But if that's your peak training cycles before your race, maybe you want to hire a cleaner, get someone that's going to come in and cook, or maybe you go to like a food prepping company instead of making your family meals. Again, there's options for this. This is what we go over weekly with coaching calls too, but this is the bread and butter. Races. So what races do you have? Going back to that and drawing them across, just put a little X on that date. And even if you want a highlighter, this is where we get to have all our colors come out. You get to kind of go in and pop where those are. Now, beside those races, we didn't talk that in the first sheet, but what are A and B races? And some people know about this, but for novice or beginner runners, it's probably new news to you. If you have multiple races in the year, we like to deem them, especially when they're closer to each other, if they're an A race or a B race. And an A race is the one we want to do really well in, or we want it to be our really good performance or a really big focus. The B races are great races as training runs. We don't taper as much for them necessarily. They just become part of our training and our race experience, and they can be these mini check-in points too for our fitness and for our race performance as well. And they might not even be the same distance as your A race goal, but it's just nice to decipher the ones that you're really hoping to take home a good result from, and the ones that you're like, okay, cool, that will actually be in this cycle in my prep for my half marathon, that's my A race. And that 10K will be a really great adjunct in our process to getting to that half marathon. So lovely to have that in your race calendar, so you can start to see stuff sort of frameworking now. You can start to see some things happening. And now, based on your fitness, based on past experience leading up to races, how long did it take to prep you for them? So again, this will be different person to person, and sometimes this is where personalized coaching and advice does come in instead of just going blanketed. But 3 to 4 months if you're going for a 10K or a half marathon, and you do have a bit under your belt already, and a bit longer than that if you need more ramp up time. Again, sometimes in cycles it's best where we have seasons, and sometimes it can take us a year to get up to speed for even getting excited or interested in racing, and we're just building that habit of training and learning to have a lifestyle of running that we enjoy before we start peeling in races. And we have about, I'd say half of our clients right now are runners for life that are starting to dabble in races. They just have it dialed in with their training and their strength and their mobility and their multiple running a week that gives them so much mental clarity and so much satisfaction that now they're like, yeah, sure, let's try racing. But that was never the reason for them getting into it. So now we've got that. We're going to think about sign-up times. When do sign-up times happen for your races? And when do you need that to happen? When do early bird dates end? When do they, when does signing up even become available for the races you're interested in? Just so you don't miss the mark. So you don't miss the mark on that. And if you are injured, popping in those dates of like when the last transfer is, or when your cutoff times are to make those decisions for pushing the race, reducing race distance, etc. Nice to have our weekly / monthly training cycles look to be 3 to 4 weeks of a build. Each time they're cyclical. They get a little bit harder in how fast or how much of a build we're doing in our mileage a week, and then we have recovery week, and then we build again and recovery week, constantly moving up. And I mean, we have a methodology here at Excel that's like base, build, boost. We create that nice functional foundational base where our body gets used to load, our body gets used to running again, and then we build and we add more strength and more kind of polarized running, interval running. We get a little bit funky in the way that we switch up our training too, and we start to bring in different methods. So using heart rate zones, training zones, that sort of deal, so we can get a bit more focus and a bit more specific as we have already gained that base. So we're building on that. And then our boost is where we now really do start to polarize. Instead of having intervals, we start to think of those long runs as really focused long runs, and our midweek runs to have those interval training, but they're focused on pushing our VO2 max up so that our performance gets better too. I feel like that was a bit too complicated, maybe too fast. But basically having 3 to 4 months of a nice flow getting us up to our race day is ideal. And thinking of having 3 to 4 week builds with a slight recovery week before we start the next one. So you can almost shade those out into your calendar so that you have a bit of a focus too on, okay, working back from my race, let's do 1 week, 2 weeks of tapered, again, depending on your race. I don't want to get too specific here because it really does depend on you. It depends on your race, your experience, your body, everything. That's why we make everything personalized. But we go off of these frameworks of cycles and of training plans, and this is how you would coach appropriately for every body that is getting into running and is training up for a race. So thinking of having those taper weeks, however long that needs for your specific race, back from that race date. Cool. Now we build into that cycle. What does that 3-4 week chunk look like? Rest week or recovery week or active motion week. That's where we do other things like yoga or just spend time with friends. We cycle. We just do something for rest and recovery and really focus on that week. And let's cycle back 3-4 weeks at a time, then that recovery week. And again, you want to have probably 4 to 5 cycles of that if you really want to make sure you have enough time for everything. Again, not everything goes to plan in our training, which is the beauty of being a human. But like you'll have maybe a week in there somewhere where you got 3 or 4 days of sickness. right? We get the cold if it's that season. If you got kids, you got to bank on these things. The more time that you can, pull back and have in prep for this, the better. Good. So, have this calendar. For those of you who are coaching with us, this is just a nice way to reset, a nice way to refocus after you've had races, or even you're entering kind of into a new alignment within your coaching as well. If you have not been a racer before and now you're like, you know what? That'd be really fun. Good. Let's kind of layer all these life pieces in to make sure that you feel the most successful as you head towards your next race goal. As you enter in this next season of life, this next season of busyness that surrounds us daily, that we get to be in control of, but also not put too crazy much expectation when these things can layer. I hope this tool is helpful. Again, we'll be back with lots of tools. These are all things that go directly to all of our strength training clients. Again, all of our memberships are 100% digital. You can access everything. You get so much support as a digital client with us as you gear up towards your races, as you train just to be a lifelong, healthy, injury-free runner. And if you use running just as a pulse check and navigation to your mental clarity, because a lot of us have a lot whirling around and we need coaches. We need someone in our corner cheering us on, holding us accountable to the things we want to do on the daily, on the weekly, yes, on the big goal, race specific goals. But just a reminder that we've got your back and we're here to provide you the tools.